I played Assassin's Creed Mirage early, and here's what I think. I was fortunate enough to play Assassin's Creed Mirage a few weeks ago, and these are my first impressions of the game and if I think it's worth picking up when it releases on October 5th. I need to clarify that Ubisoft was kind enough to let me play the game and record my session, but I am in no way paid by them. There is no expectation for me to make a video like this, and I'm surprised they even reached out at all because the last time they worked with me was during Assassin's Creed Valhalla, where I was less than kind to it. And I even got a review copy for Far Cry 6, but disliked the game so much, I couldn't push myself to finish it, let alone make a video. The point is, I've always tried to be honest with you guys, and that's gonna happen here too. Ubisoft didn't bless me with this job, you did. So you come first. So, is Assassin's Creed Mirage finally a return to form, or has Ubisoft's sentiment of going back to their roots been a mirage all along? Keep in mind there will be minor gameplay spoilers ahead. The answer depends on the kind of fan you are, because despite every step in the right direction, Valhalla's roots are still here. Personally, I've been a fan of the series since Assassin's Creed 2, and I've played every release since, and get ready for a hot take, I enjoyed essentially all of them to varying degrees. If you were hoping for a return to the days of the Ezio collection or even the Kenway saga, then I'm sorry, this won't satisfy you. If you enjoyed the RPG games, then you'll definitely enjoy this, and if you didn't mind the RPG style but took issue with the lack of actual assassins and the shrinking emphasis on stealth, then you'll be happy to hear the Mirage is not steps, but leaps and bounds in the right direction. I'll break down the different systems at play looking at strengths, weaknesses, hopes, and concerns to explain what I mean. Before we get into it, I want to give context to the demo I played. I was able to explore the open world freely and was focused on assassinating a target who was part of the Order of the Ancients. I was free to spend about an hour and a half exploring and doing a few side objectives on the way to my goal. Because I was free to go anywhere, I'm confident in saying that this felt well polished. There were no crashes, slowdown, glitches, despite expecting it to be a bit of a mess. With that said, things are always changing until the game releases, so if you are unsure of how the game runs, wait for reviews closer to the game's launch to be as safe as possible. Okay. So the first order of business is the movement, and there's both good and bad things to say. The bad part is that the movement is nearly unchanged from Valhalla. The good news is that it's also the most disappointing part of the game, meaning everything else is solid. Movement consists of holding X and running towards something, and there's borderline no depth to movement. I tried my damnedest, but there's no back ejecting, no side ejecting, nothing. You can hold B to descend, but it's about as inaccurate as Valhalla's system, which is disappointing, and in fact I'd call it painful, because Baghdad feels like it was built for an older Assassin's Creed game, and there were so many instances where I thought to myself, man, if this were any Assassin's Creed from Unity and earlier, I would have a field day. But alas, I had to make do. And truthfully, the level design still allows for fun. Pillars and posts guide your escape in between the rooftops infested with guards, but there's always an underlying disappointment. I didn't take issue with the lack of parkour in previous games simply because it wasn't viable. Egypt didn't have a ton of architecture to act as a playground, and the same goes for the rolling hills of Valhalla. But here, I couldn't get it out of my head. Why is the series so terrified of giving its players control? To give some further behind the scenes information, I've been in contact with Ubisoft regarding the release of Mirage for months now, and they've shown me a ton of gameplay and asked for feedback. In every single instance, I did my best to hammer home the fans' desire for deeper movement. I practically got on my knees and said that if you were going back to the roots of Assassin's Creed, parkour is where you start. I tried to be a voice for you guys, and I advocated for movement options that I wanted and features I saw the community requesting. I know they heard me, but I can't make them listen. I might be leaning too far into criticizing what is not here instead of what is, so let's get back on track. The movement here for what it is fine. It gets the job done, and I didn't find myself getting stuck on anything, nor did I feel any inaccuracies when making jumps. I appreciate that fall damage is increased this time around, encouraging the player to develop a proper path down from a high point instead of aiming for the bushes like we did in Odyssey and Valhalla. There are multiple routes to get to the same location, which made chases more dynamic, and I can easily say that as far as environments go, this is the best in the RPG era. And while it doesn't take much to clear it, it is still a shallow husk of its former glory. Credit where it's due, it's serviceable, and most of that is due to the level design, which always features something for you to climb on or slide under. Additions are reasonably slim, but the pole vault is a nice touch, even if it's a canned animation. Actually, all of these come with new animations, which help give Basim his own identity when moving, and it's one of the many ways which you will easily forget that this was initially a DLC for Valhalla. You might think that with the relatively unchanged parkour, it's a sign that Ubisoft did not listen to feedback, but the stealth here will likely convince you of the opposite, because not only is it fleshed out and fun, it is encouraged heavily. I'm not here to have an argument over the damage numbers, because that could be a video in itself, but fundamentally, stealth in the last few games, especially Valhalla, was not great. The AI was deaf enough to not hear an arrow whiz by them, but had eyesight good enough to detect you near instantly, at times when they really shouldn't have. Your stealth abilities were cut down severely. Those abilities like the chain assassination had a mind of their own, randomly deciding when or when it didn't want to work, and while social stealth was in the game, it was tacked on, and it was clear the missions were not designed with them in mind. Here, it is the exact opposite, from the fundamentals of stealth to the bells and whistles. In previous entries, stealth was not encouraged because combat was insanely easy. Why sneak through a camp to get to your target, thinning the numbers along the way when you can go in hot, slaughter them all and in a quarter of the time. In Mirage, combat is challenging. Not too challenging, but enough for me to die on multiple occasions. Granted, during my play session there was about 100 milliseconds of input delay, but I'm still confident that parry timings are significantly tighter and their rest frames longer. And Basim is as fragile as ever. Can you complete encounters in combat? Yes, but it is equally, if not better, to use stealth most of the time. And your toolset further encourages a sneaky approach. You still have some tried and true methods like hiding in tall grass, haystacks, and the like, but there are even further dedicated blending spots, and you can seamlessly blend in and out of crowds just like the older games. This alone makes the stealth better than Valhalla. But what about games like Unity? Well, you have throwing knives, whistling, smoke bombs, and more to aid you in the shadows, which were the same abilities present in Unity. I appreciated their inclusions, but I mostly appreciated the options. There was a moment where I saw 3 targets that were separated. I could use a smoke bomb, but I wouldn't have enough time to kill them all in one swoop. So after some deliberation, I decided I would come up from below, take one out, throw a smoke bomb, and use it to take out the other 2. This was a very minor moment, but it was a moment where I had to stop and think about how I was going to take down a target for more than a few seconds. That, to me, is fun. When stealth is like a puzzle. It's critical to mention that the target had bulky armor, so going in head on was an unwise approach, and it would also lead to the rest of the base being on alert. This is what I mean when I say stealth was encouraged. Some of you have seen the gameplay revealed leading up to this, and if you did, then you know that there is a significantly easier solution, the chain assassination. Through a glitch in the Animus or something like that, Basim can essentially teleport from victim to make a chain assassination. Some have criticized this ability for being unrealistic, but I disagree. Sure, it looks unrealistic, but it completely works within the bounds of the Animus and thus the world, and it simply speeds up a process that you already perform without it. If anyone's going to take up issue with the ability, it should be the fact that it serves the purpose of speeding up gameplay that is already rewarding without it. It's like the chain kill from Liberation. I could just do this myself, why do I need an ability for it? In fairness, there is some utility, such as early assassinations where there are 2 guards standing next to one another and you have no smoke bombs. This is a simple means of solving a situation like this. When I was in a large base, I had 3 targets that weren't close and facing each other, and I wouldn't be able to kill one without the other seeing. Farther away was a guard who just walked underneath some cement I could drop on him, and thus my plan came together. Use a throwing knife to drop the cement, killing one guard, and while the rest of the base is looking in the other direction, I activate the ability and clean up the whole area. Again, I felt rewarded because I analyzed my environment and created opportunities for a flawless execution. The chain assassination is also charged by getting kills, so it's not often overused, and in my case, I kept it as a get out of jail free card. You can of course upgrade it through some of the skill trees present, which are significantly smaller than Valhalla, which while not saying much is again a step in the right direction. I'd say it's comparable to Syndicate, and it seems the gear and skills are more focused, which is a major theme here. This does not seem like a smaller Assassin's Creed game, but a denser Assassin's Creed game. Valhalla had too much content, and much of it wasn't good enough to justify said quantity. But from what I played, the environments are smaller but with more buildings, civilians, and things to interact with. The skills are fewer but more impactful, and the story seems like it's going to focus just on Basim's story and not get sidetracked along the way. I can't discuss the details of the mission I was on in this demo, but I can say that it was well executed, and I was not only forced to eavesdrop to gather information, I also, as I was walking around looking for clues, overheard a random conversation that revealed information about my target, and there was no marker or pop-up or anything that says, "Oh, look, you discovered a clue," and that made me feel like I was actually investigating. The mission was marketed like the black box assassinations of Unity, and while in concept that is true, because I was only able to play it once, I'm unsure if that's the case. Furthermore, I'll admit that eventually the mission felt on rails, but I could totally be wrong about that. Either way, it was fun, engaging, and that's exactly what I wanted the game to be. Once I dealt with the target, I had to haul ass back to the bureau while the whole city searched for me, and it was great. I don't like praising such a superficial thing, but simply because I was wearing white, sneaking through crowds, and eventually returning to my fellow hidden ones felt amazing. To recap, the movement is nearly painful to use because the map is designed like a canvas and our brush is a wet noodle. Combat is toned back, which is great because it encourages the stealth that sees added depth, viability, and complementing enemy layouts, allowing for many encounters to take patience, skill, and forethought. The story is still vague, but I enjoyed what I saw, and I appreciate the smaller scope of the game. Also, the soundtrack from what I heard is pretty good too. Overall, Mirage just went from a game that I was going to play out of obligation to one that I am very excited to play. After I finished my demo, I went back to Valhalla because I've been playing it in anticipation for Mirage, and my god, the difference is night and day. At this point, I'm for sure picking the game up, but as always, if you're watching this video to decide if you should pre-order the game, watch more. Don't rely on just my opinion, because I've been wrong in the past and I'll surely be wrong in the future. In fact, I was wrong about Mirage. During the marketing campaigns, I thought a return to form, yeah right, but here I am, convinced, corrected, and becoming increasingly more impatient. I want to give a big shout out to our patrons and channel members for supporting the channel, and if you want to get these videos early and have your name on screen too, then you can click the link below. Thank you for watching, and thanks for supporting me enough to get the privilege to play this game. Much love, and take care.